Hey everybody, it's Greg Harrelson here, and of course we're going to chat a little bit more about Real Geeks today, and it's that time of the week, and I'm going to be talking about leads. I'm going to just share with you like identifying leads in your funnel. I should have actually said identifying where leads are in your funnel because I want to talk about that and give you some concepts. That I hope will resonate with you regarding just leads in the funnel. I think a lot of times, well, let me get my notes before I get too deep into this and miss a few things. Bear with me here. Okay, got it. Yeah, identifying where your leads are in the funnel. A lot of times when we talk about funnels, what we really do is we kind of use terms like we put them in categories. Well, this leads at the top of the funnel, this leads in the middle of the funnel, or this leads at the bottom of the funnel. That's kind of how we reference our leads. That's kind of the categories that we put our leads in. And top of the funnel means it's like, okay, they just came in, it's a new lead, and they just started their search. That's kind of what we mean by top of the funnel. The middle of the funnel is like people are kind of like, okay, they've been searching for a while. They're starting to narrow down what it is that they want to buy. They're starting to identify a little bit better what they're looking for. You're probably nurturing them. There's been multiple conversations. That's the middle of the funnel. And then you got bottom of the funnel. And the bottom of the funnel is like, okay, now they're writing contracts. It's like, so everyone goes through this process. They lead source dumps a lead into your funnel. They dump it into the top of the funnel. They kind of get worked and nurtured in the middle of the funnel. And then they fall out the bottom of the funnel in the form of sales. And that's how most people think about the sales cycle or the process of working leads. I'm going to share, kind of give you my own terminology. I kind of don't use really top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of a funnel as a way to describe where my leads are. I'm going to just share with you a different way to identify where they are in the funnel in hopes that maybe this information will help you. So the categories that I use are this. Leads are either in the dreaming phase, kind of like at the top of the funnel. They're either in the dreaming phase, they're in the exploratory phase, or they're in the buying, or also known as the listing phase. It depends on if it's a buyer lead or a seller lead. So if there's the dreaming phase, the exploratory phase, and then there's the buying or the listing phase. That's the categories that we use. And keep in mind, from a company and a team standpoint, we're closing well over 1,000 buyer deals, and all of our buyer deals, the majority of all of our buyer deals are being worked through our Real Geeks, captured in Real Geeks, worked through our Real Geeks platform. So I've got a good bit of experience with this. And over the years, I came up with the dreaming phase, the exploratory phase, and the buying phase, or you could call it the listing phase. And I want to share with you like some signs. How do you know? How do you identify where they are? How do you identify where they are in what phase that they're in? And I'm going to just change one thing here real quick, or I'm going to add one thing, if I may. There we go. I'm going to change the banner there to the footer, 3 phases of leads, because I think that's more appropriate to what I'm referring to. So we got the exploratory or the dreaming, the exploratory, and the buying. And so how does one know what phase they're in? So let me just kind of share with you, like, I live, one of my markets is Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, also Wilmington, Charleston. Those are all coastal markets. And then we're inland in multiple markets throughout South Carolina. But, it's very common in the winter. It'll be a cold storm, cold weather up north. And we get all these people and they're like, oh man, we need to move down south. It's too cold. I'm tired of this snow. I'm tired of this ice. They get onto the internet. And next thing you know, they start looking at pieces of real estate. They're snowed in. They can't go to work. They're getting on their phones, on the internet, their tablets, and they're looking at real estate. Maybe on your website, maybe Zillow, Realtor.com, who knows? They're just looking on websites. And then they end up seeing something that they like. They actually are seeing something in Florida, in North Carolina, in South Carolina. They're like all these coastal cities. They're thinking about how warm it is. They're just daydreaming, right? And these websites sometimes capture those people as leads. That's what I call dreaming phase. See, and then we end up talking to these leads sometimes, and and I want to give you a clue on how can you pick up what phase that they're in. Well, let's just say that you're talking to one of those leads, and this lead says something, yeah, we're not really sure if we're going to come down and buy in South Carolina. We're kind of looking in North Carolina, South Carolina, and even down to Florida. When I get a buyer that says South Carolina, North Carolina, and possibly Florida, means their criteria is very broad. When the criteria is that broad, then it's highly likely that they're in the dreaming phase. That doesn't make them a bad lead. It just helps you identify where they are, what phase that they're in. They may even say things like, yeah, we're kind of looking at condos, houses. I mean, I don't think we really want to build, but I mean, I guess if the right lot came available, we might consider building. That's the dreaming phase. Because we know that typically, we know somebody will say, I want a house, 3-bedroom. They end up buying a 2-bedroom, or say, I want a 4-bedroom and end up buying a 3-bedroom or a 5-bedroom. I want a garage, and sometimes they accept not having a garage. Okay, so I don't necessarily believe that those are all tells for dreaming phase. But when somebody's saying condo, house, lot, we could build, South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida, dreaming phase. Then we have the exploratory phase. Exploratory phase is a little bit different. The exploratory phase is we're starting to see that their questions are becoming a little bit more specific and a little bit more localized. Now, I'm going to use my town or my market as an example, and I'm sure you can relate this to every one of your markets. So exploratory is like maybe they're no longer asking about different markets, different states. But now they're saying, well, you know what? We're looking at Myrtle Beach. We don't mind North Myrtle Beach. Would even go out to Conway and maybe all the way south down to Pawleys Island. Like that's every stretch of my market. Like that's up to the North Carolina border. It's way out west and it's way down south. The beach is east, so can't go way east. You can only go but so far east in my market. It's more like a triangle. And so when people are saying North Myrtle Beach, Pawleys Island, heck, even out west is fine. But they're no longer saying South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida. Then now I know they're more likely in the exploratory phase. They kind of narrowed it down to a market. Now they're starting to explore where in that market they'd like to position themselves. Because these are all different towns. In a lot of cases, they're even different price points. So they're exploring. But at least we know it's our market. At least we know that. But they still need a little bit more time to narrow things down. And they will want to look at properties in all of those towns because they're comparing, they're exploring. But they're comparing and exploring now in a smaller localized footprint versus the East Coast. Because I'll get it all the time. Yeah, Hilton Head, Charleston, Wilmington, Myrtle Beach. We might even think about Florida. Dreaming phase. Then they start saying, well, South Carolina. Okay, still dreaming because it's Hilton Head, Charleston, Myrtle Beach. Then they shift from dreaming to exploratory, says, well, we kind of decided on the Myrtle Beach area, but we're just not sure, Myrtle Beach, Surfside. All of those are just such different sub-markets and sub-areas in my one market. That's exploratory. Then we have the next one, and it's the buying or the listing phase. The buying or the listing phase. So we could talk about what does that look like? Well, now all of a sudden, they've narrowed it down, not only from a local, from a territorial standpoint, they've narrowed it down, but the questions they start asking are totally different. They start asking things like, you know what? Hey, what are the school systems like? What are the better schools? Or what are the schools like in this particular, in Myrtle Beach? What's the North Myrtle Beach schools like? Hey, what are taxes in this area? What's the insurance? Like, what would insurance be on a house like this? What's the HOA include? They've narrowed it down to a section of one town, and in many cases, a few different neighborhoods. Now, if they're looking at something, maybe it's a high-end community and there's not a bunch of neighborhoods all clumped up together, then maybe they're looking at that price point and they have to still look in different neighborhoods and maybe even neighboring towns that are fairly close by because there's only so many properties at that price point. But you see, they're sticking in that price point. They're sticking at houses in that price point and they're asking questions about taxes, HOA, insurance cost. Where are the hospital, schools? Just kind of curious, what are the closing costs? What are the interest rates? Those are all people that are likely in the buying or selling listing phase. Very, very important to understand this. See, the key is to identify what phase these leads are and make sure you're communicating and providing the information that they need at that time. We got to have the ability to meet them where they are. If we can meet them where they are, that goes a long way with building trust and rapport. It wins them over. We become their agent. Unfortunately, what ends up happening in our business is this. Real estate agents get discouraged when they identify that somebody's in the dreaming phase and then they ignore them. They ignore the lead. They think it's a waste of time. Well, if you ignore the lead when they're in the dreaming phase, the lead will ignore you when they're in the buying phase. If you ignore them in the dreaming phase, they're going to ignore you when they're in the buying phase. It's very, very important to understand that. Very important to understand that. And you got to also understand that all leads go through all phases. Now, they may move through these phases a lot faster. You may say, oh, no, I got a buyer the other day and they wrote a contract. Yes, that doesn't mean they didn't go through the dreaming and the exploratory phase. It just means that the other agent that they had working with them at one time or that they were talking to, that agent ignored them. So when we get lucky and get a call or an email for somebody that buys, we're like, yeah, I don't know what Greg's talking about there. These buyers, sometimes there's just good buyers that like buy right away. No, that's not true. You just got lucky that that your competition across the street ignored that lead in the dreaming and exploratory phase, and you hit the lottery by just answering the phone that day or calling them the day that they were transitioning into the buying phase. That's a very important factor here to understand that they all go through these phases. What that means is, and the importance of that means of that is this, that you cannot neglect these leads that are in the dreaming phase because those are your future closings. In all these conversations about leads and PPC and Zillow and organic leads, these leads, online leads are terrible. No, they're not terrible. What that is an impatient agent describing a lead that's in the dreaming or exploratory phase. Agents describe those leads as terrible. They're not terrible. They're just at that phase. That lead also buys, and we should not be judging the lead's quality based on time to convert. Because with Real Geeks and the technology we have with advanced search filters, market activity reports, sold reports, new property alerts, price reductions being notified in these alerts, the drip campaigns, the workflows that we have, the email templates, the text templates, automation, all of these tools are designed to help us nurture databases and help them through the process of the three phases. I know for me, and some of you already know this, I'll put it up here. If you want to check out how we do that, like I have this coaching program called Real Geeks Mastery. I've been using Real Geeks for, I don't know, 15 years. I have over, I think, 10 Real Geeks websites, 300 to 400,000 people combined in all those websites. So yes, I've had them a long time. We nurture a lot of leads. I have 300 agents in these websites. So I understand the onboarding process, every little aspect of Real Geeks. We've really got it dialed in. So if you want to learn more about Real Geeks, the Real Geeks websites, and share with you how we move people through the funnels through using automation and the Real Geeks technology, how we're building our business, check out rgmastery.com. Just check it out. It's a small fee. It's a live call every week. Everything's archived. There's probably 100 different videos, tutorial videos, how-to videos on different subjects there that you can check out. But we talk about these things. So again, you got the three phases: the dreaming phase, the exploratory phase, and the buying phase. And right now, what we need to be doing, like an example of how, Greg, how can you use Real Geeks to know when they're making a transition? Okay. Well, look at have an advanced search filter set up where you can automatically populate on your dashboard a list of people that have favorited something new. So favorited a new property, a new favorite in the last 30 days. And look to see what they're favoriting. Like you may see when they first came in as a lead, they came in searching for, $400,000 house in North Myrtle Beach. And they searched a few in North Myrtle Beach and Pawleys Island, Conway, Myrtle Beach, Surfside, all these different towns and cities. But now all of a sudden you're starting to notice that they're favoriting properties all in the same price point, in the same area of your town. You'll start to see there's more consistency of what they're favoriting. Now it's like they keep favoriting properties at $350,000 to $400,000. They keep favoriting those properties. They keep favoriting things that are in certain neighborhoods in a section of your town. That tells me they're getting closer to, they're either in the exploratory phase or they potentially could be in the buying phase. You better call them. You better call them. So that's how we take this funnel and we look at those three phases, and then we can find clues within their engagement in our database as to what phase they're likely to be. It's not just a conversation. You can see based on their search criteria and what they're favoriting, whether or not they're likely to be a buyer, an explorer, or a dreamer. And you'll see many people, if you use workflows properly and you stay in communication, you'll see over time, many of your dreamers will become buyers, and you can see what they're looking at and you'll be able to notice the transition. I actually think Real Geeks is like a lead identification system. We generate leads, and then the tools help us identify the low-hanging fruit and who we need to invest our time in. But it starts with just keeping it simple. What I just suggest all of you do right now is understand the definitions, the characteristics of a dreamer, an explorer, and a buyer. And pay attention to that and listen. So if you know that somebody's early on in the process, some people would say top of funnel, I call them the dreamers, then we set them up on a workflow. Make sure that you set them up on to get property alerts. If they haven't saved a search, you save a search for them. Make sure they're getting those alerts. Monitor what they're looking at. And based on what they're looking at, you can see what phase they are in. And then you call them, have conversations with them. You'll be able to figure out very quickly if they're moving down towards the bottom, which is the buying phase. So real estate is not complicated, but it can be complex. Like if you want to do more deals, you've got to learn the Real Geek system. You got to understand these little nuances, what to look for, and then be watching every single day. Like look at the live feed. Just check out the live feed and see what people are doing. See what your leads are doing and compare it to what they've done in the past, and that can give you an idea. Now, I'm always going to say the fastest way to build your business is to call all the people in your database. Right now, if I was you, I would double down on the amount of conversations I'm having daily with people that are in my database. I challenge you to look at all the leads that you generated between 60 and 90 days ago and look at each one of them. So you could put new lead between 60 and 90 days ago and find that list and go through every single one of them and ask yourself and look at your notes and see all the ones that you did not call in the last 2 weeks. If you've got leads 60 to 90 days old and you have not called them in the last 2 weeks, that's low-hanging fruit. I suggest you call them now. All right, everybody. Well, those are the 3 phases of leads. I hope you found that informative. And also hopefully you understand how we will take that and start to utilize that information by leveraging the technology within Real Geeks. Of course, I have a coaching program called Real Geeks Mastery. You can go to rgmastery.com, find some more information about it. And then, of course, if you don't feel like, making a commitment to be in our coaching program, then just stick around here and watch these videos for free. I go a lot more in depth because I have more time on the coaching platform. But heck, I'm happy to be able to give this and contribute to the Real Geeks, mastermind group via this Facebook page. So keep tuning in. Let me know if I can do anything for you. Bye, everybody.